We'll wait till the train stops blowing. Okay, let's get started. If I don't get hung up here. Welcome to the University of Tennessee Nuclear Engineering Department Colloquium Program. My name is Lee Dodds, and it's my privilege to introduce today's speaker. And actually, we have two speakers. We have Mr. Robert Ridenour and Slade Griffin from the Information Technology Security Group of the Office of Information Technology here on campus. Robert received a BS in Electrical Engineering from UT about 20 years ago, and he spent the last 20 years in the IT business. And Slade is the Navy person. He spent 7 years in the Navy, and he has a total of 10 years experience in the information technology business. With the viruses that we've had and the worms we've had in the past month, I think this topic is particularly important, not only for our university, but for many universities. And so, Robert and Slade, we're glad you're here. Their topic is computer system security in academia. Robert, welcome.
I want to thank you for the opportunity. We are trying to talk to everybody all over the campus, Knoxville campus, and in fact we are going to go to Tullahoma in the near future, trying to raise awareness of security issues. It has helped us, which is kind of a sad way to put it, all the worms and viruses and all the problems we've had, raise awareness and open some doors for us. And this is one of those doors that's been opened. And this is a tremendous opportunity for us. Like I said, I'm looking forward to your input and to some of your questions. Security in academia, we originally called this security awareness, but we want to mesh the two together now. It's not just awareness, it's more than that. It's kind of a teamwork type effort is what we're looking for and working together. So why security? We get that question a lot, and so the first part of my presentations, I hope, is going to answer that question for you. Slade is more of the technical kind of side, and he's going to talk some of the technical things we do, and then I'll kind of finish with a recent assessment that we have done with some more information. So, why security? If you plug in to the internet, you automatically assume risk. I know a lot of us plug into the internet and we think my computer's safe, or it's not going to happen to me, or you know, this is really easy to do, I don't have to worry about anything. But as soon as you plug into the internet, you assume a certain amount of risk, and there are real risks. We're going to talk about some of that, but there are real risks associated with that. So whenever you have risk, there are consequences. I'm going to show you some of those, and some of those have happened here on this campus. Some of the consequences, some real issues happen with those risks. So then, with consequences, you need protection. So if we know for a fact we have risk, we have consequences, then we know we need some form of protection. So that kind of finishes the triangle in the sense that we work that triangle is what we do. That's what security is. We provide that organization and that protection from the consequences of known risk. And so we work a lot of what we do off of that triangle, off of what you see on the screen. So why security? We in the assessment, and this is kind of pulled from that, came up with some reasons and some other issues besides just, well, we need to protect information. There are real goals to increase research dollars. And in doing that, in looking at a lot of the proposals, there are real requirements for security issues, security infrastructure, when you're trying to do some of those things. The hacker activity and the skill levels is just amazing. We'll get a warning, like a Microsoft issue, and before the week's out, here comes some kind of virus or worm following that. These people are really good, they're very creative, and they're very aggressive. So, why not security? A lot of people know security. If you look at that by the firewall kind of symbol, they think of firewalls, and that's where they see a lot of it. So that's the picture I draw for security. But then, on top of that, we have efficiency and convenience. And what happens is, and I know that's kind of violent, But in a lot of ways, that's what we get. In fact, we were way, if I can get the mouse, oh, it's not going to show it. But we, on the security side, we were way over here with convenience and efficiency pushing against us. And we've kind of pushed back to the middle a little bit, and that's kind of what some of these worms and viruses, recent attacks have done, is made people realize, well, maybe I've got to type in a real password. Maybe now I've got to take one more step to protect myself. Maybe now I'm a little less efficient and it costs me another $1, but it saves me so much in the long run. And that's kind of what we're fighting continuously. We fight that battle, especially at the university, everywhere we go. I came from Oak Ridge. I worked in the classified arena at Oak Ridge, where I had to walk through razor wire and infrared and all kinds of sensors just to get to my job. And everything I touched had some kind of rule or guideline. And then I come here, and nothing we touch just about has rule or guidelines. So, there's a lot of compromise there that goes into dealing with this. How much is too much, and kind of leads into this next slide. All right, we're assuming we got risk. We have real risk associated with your computer. Not mine, not the servers, not the central stuff, with your computer. So what do we do about that? What's risk management? Uh-oh, that was interesting. Well, normally that slide shows that if you lean to the right, which is what we do, you're complacent, and it's all voluntary, and so you lean to the left like the Department of Defense does, and everything has restrictions, and everything has response. And what we want to do, and if you can't tell it, but there's a line in the middle, sitting on that pin in the middle, where we want to have a balance between paranoia and between complacency. We want to find an in-between in there. And right now we're working hard that's part of the awareness, is helping people understand how to get to that part. So, now it's going to, okay.
You can go back. You see those arrows up there?
Yeah.
Use the arrows. Just tap on them.
Okay, maybe we'll try that. Okay. All right. So, recently, the first one, if you look at the first line, Slade actually it was on the front page of the Beacon where we caught this person. They stole 60 identities, and what they were doing was trying to get 60 credit cards for themselves. And they were really smart. They were going to a spot on campus that they could log on to the network and get off and not be detected. And so we kept watching for this person. I guess about 2 weeks we were tracking this person, and Slade almost got run over running across the street trying to get there before they turned the machine in, and we got there just in time and actually picked this person up. But the one mistake they made that we'd probably never found them is they were trying to send all the credit cards back to a single P.O. box. So they were kind of smart and kind of dumb in a way, and so that's how the bank alerted us. And so this person stole 60 student identities. It may have been one of yours, in which he was trying to get a credit card in that name because he got the name and social security number. And so that really happened on our campus. We actually caught him, and he wasn't successful, but he could have gotten away. The Oracle database was really interesting, the second one. We could sit and watch this person move around in our database, and we couldn't catch him. And I don't think we ever did catch him. We got him to stop because we tightened it down so much he went away and left us alone. But he was moving around in our systems, and we couldn't catch him. We could see him doing it, but we couldn't stop him. Couldn't catch him doing it, so we never did catch the guy. A lot of us remember the slammer worm. If you ever tried on the internet on that Saturday, it shut down 80% of the internet, shut down all of our network. Really interesting about that one, if all the systems had been patched correctly and updated, we wouldn't have been affected at all, but instead our entire network went down. And the last one was another interesting one because we never did understand how that person got hold of those emails because within tracking it wasn't clear how they did that. So that's part of shows some of the things that happened to us on the campus, and that some of them we never figure out how they do it. That's how creative they are. So when you look at this, let's see if that's how this is. There's a lot of them are going to appear on here, and the point I want to make out of this, and it normally it kind of goes away, is that they keep coming. Is that there are more and more viruses every time we turn around. There are new ones. The reason the last little bit in August was so bad is because we had 3 hit in about a 2-week period. But they keep coming. They keep growing. And So Big G, if you can see right there in the middle, is the next one that's coming, supposedly. And if you know So Big F, it's the reason why for 3 straight days I got over 1,500 emails. I don't know if any of you had that wonderful luxury. One lady I talked to got 10,000 emails in one day. With So Big F, we ended up having to buy 4. We already had 2 we bought and 2 more, so we ended up with 4 extra email servers for central email just to handle so big ads. So that's kind of, it happens to us. It's real. It really does happen. But this is, we try to keep records. When I first started this job, it'll be 2 years in February, we had no records of incidents on campus. So we had a new remedy system. We started entering trouble tickets and issues and when we worked on things. And so this gives you some information. But what's really interesting about that is if you look, there's 646 copyright incidents in a 6-month period. This is December through June. That kind of gives you an idea of what our number one issue is in terms of some of the security issues on campus is copyright. And I think we're educating the students and they're beginning to they're getting to understand, we're getting smarter and figuring out ways around it. But we don't see as many this fall, which is good. Hopefully it's cut down some. So that's where sharing illegal, the peer-to-peer that you're seeing in the news, that's what that is. So just to make sure. But we don't have all the numbers. A lot of people get compromises or issues and they don't report them. And so, but if you get an issue on your machine, anybody that's watching this, and you fix it yourself, go ahead and give the information to us. And we report this to management so that they can see kind of what the real issues are.
What is spoofing? I knew that once and I forgot.
That's where, go ahead, you want to? Okay. Oh, you're off mine. Okay. It's where they go into a building and essentially steal an IP address. They look like an IP address in a building so they can get access when they're not supposed to be. So they get into a building, and just a second, and they pick up that IP address, and so they're running out IP address in the building, and then they go away. And so we can't ever track them. Yes?
One thing, since we're asking a quick question, did those 60 people get told that their identities were taken? Have they been told?
Once we caught the person, we turned it over to law enforcement, and I don't know, honestly. We'd have to ask UT Police. They handled the investigation and all that. So that's a good question. I don't know what the answer is. So. Did that answer your question on spoofing? No. Okay. What a lot of what some of the students want to do is they want a set address, and so they'll go in a building and just pick an address they know, and then they'll assume that address, and that way. But we can't track them when they do that. So. And with this. The next part, I want to go ahead and let Slade pick up with this. Slade does all the technical side of what we do in security, a lot of the incident tracking and a lot of things like that. So he knows a lot more about this than I do, so I'm going to let Slade take over the rest, and then I'll be back. So.
Who asked about the notification on the stolen IDs? I believe the credit card company, if they could determine who you were based on the information they were given by this person, they did it, but that isn't really up to us when it gets to be legal. But I do know that they contacted a few people regarding that. IDS systems that we have on campus, that stands for Intrusion Detection Systems. Like Robert said, I'm the Information Assessment Coordinator. I take the information that we gather from the network and I provide it to James Perry and Mark Newman, who are analysts, and I give them as much information as they can to analyze so they can make an informed decision on what's going on. These are the 4 biggest categories in the IDS. An exploit is a known exploit or hack that we know is going on. And we watch this constantly. Any packet or data that goes on or off the UT campus passes by our IDS, so we can see it if we need to. We don't actively monitor what websites you're going to, what you're looking at. We're not interested in that. That's usually a question we get pretty quick. Host sweep is where someone they figure out our IP range or your building's IP range, and they start sweeping that whole subnet or that whole network, and they're looking for how many hosts they can find online. And then a port scan is once they've identified hosts that are online, they'll scan or map that individual machine that they've found. And he's going to go ahead and throw the numbers up here. Anybody have any idea how long I was doing this when I got this many numbers? Somebody want to take a guess?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, half hour? Go ahead and advance that there. We'll back up. That was 4 minutes. Normally, when we have one of our laptops on the projector, I'll actually bring up a shot of the IDS, and you can see how many people are actively scanning our network. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. We could implement firewalls at the border. What kind of problems would that cause? Would it interfere with the way you try to do business when you're researching? We don't want to do that. So what I normally look for is people from here trying to do this kind of stuff off campus. But that's a pretty staggering number right there. And that goes on all day, every day. This wasn't any kind of special day. No special worm or virus was out. This is normal traffic as far as we're concerned. The SMTP servers on campus, Robert was talking about, we had to buy 4 more and run 6 total. They have virus filtering software on them. If you get your email from our SMTP servers, we try to block the known viruses. And we always thought that this day over here in March was pretty special because we caught 70,000 messages that day. But then we had So Big F come out, and that just blew that away. That's one day. Virus is blocked. Well, we thought that was pretty good.
Sorry, I missed you.
Did you already advance that? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
These are some news clips we got off the web, other campuses that are experiencing things similar to us. This was Princeton trying to get some Yale students that were denied admission to Yale, so they thought, hey, we'll go get their money. We'll take their tuition. This was every university maintains a database of foreign national students that are on campus. That's a legal requirement now. And somebody at Kansas University was able to get information on 1,450 foreign students. They made every one of those students re-register in their system. I can't imagine what kind of grief that caused them. The inconvenience of that would be amazing. University of Texas, 59,000 Social Security numbers were compromised there. They admitted their security was weak, and actually I believe, is it Texas that now has the law, you can't use that as an identifier anymore. You can no longer use that as your student ID number. We are moving away from that here. We have dedicated a group of people to make sure that that comes off of your ID card because we don't want that to happen to us. And that was how the person that I caught earlier, they had legitimate access to that information. Students and their student ID numbers, they didn't do anything special to obtain that. So if that would have just been a different number, that could have been prevented. And once that happened, now we've got what we need to put something similar in place to what the University of Texas has got going for their state. I've seen this one before.
The keystroke monitor at Boston College.
Oh, yeah, this is a guy at Boston College walking around. Anybody heard of keystroke monitoring software? Free download, fit on a floppy, real easy. A lot of buildings on the campus, I walk around and see where people will allow me to walk around, and I'll look at their computers if I can. If I had a disk like this, I'd stick it in your computer, start monitoring your keystrokes, have it sent back to me. This guy did it to dozens of them, I believe, and 4,000 members. Got personal information of more than 4,000 members of the at Boston College. Who had a question back here?
Is keystroke monitoring software, is that illegal now? Not yet.
I don't know that you can say the software is illegal. It may have legitimate uses. I know that if my kids get on the web, I may want to know what they're doing on the web. And I believe that I can do that. They're young, and it's my house and my computers. But can I go put it on your computer? Probably not. Our AUP says that, no, I cannot do that without permission from your department head and human resources. For a student, I couldn't do it at all. But if you work here, there are steps where we could monitor what's going on. We haven't ever used keystroke monitoring software, but our AUP does say that that violates your privacy. And we've caught someone doing it here before. We had someone do it, and he thought that was his right, and we informed him that, no, you cannot do that to people here. Here's a financial data at Georgia Tech, which is part of the legal landscape that I believe will come up here in a minute. All the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act that guards how you are identified with your financial records, that got compromised at Georgia Tech. A number of credit card numbers could have been exposed there, and that could happen here. A lot of these things could happen here. We're trying to take steps to prevent that. So the original question was, could these headlines be us? Yeah, they could. So far, we've been I guess when we started, about a year ago, we decided to be just absolutely as proactive as the campus would allow us to be, and so far we haven't been in the news yet of being attacked. We get scanned all the time. People want our information, but so far we've been pretty lucky. Go ahead and go past that. These are all the, I don't want to point at the screen so nobody can see me, but this is the kind of stuff that governs some of the policies we want to implement. And did you want to talk about these now?
Yeah, I do.
I'll let Robert take this back.
One of the things that's happening in the industry is that more and more laws are coming out telling you this is how you have to protect information. Started with FERPA, at least what affects us started with FERPA. And a lot of us at the university know about FERPA, protecting student records and student information. But then came HIPAA, which was health, and we have some of that on campus. And then Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. It's what's interesting about those, how those read. Those are all laws, all requirements we have to follow, and they all read very, very much the same in terms of protection. And so they're setting a base guidelines for how you ought to protect information, all information. So when you look at this, a lot of you have noticed, maybe read in the paper, U.S. Patriot Act, some of the things that are going on with that. And so a lot of these laws, and there's a new one I just got handed just yesterday that we're researching to see if it affects us. The legal landscape is changing. And so in this magazine, the headlines read, well, a lot of people have said, well, the legal landscape's changing, but who's checking? The federal government now is out actively seeking people who are breaking these guidelines or not following the rules. And there are real penalties. There's potential jail time. There are real monetary issues that come through if you get caught. And so the requirements now are you have to know these. You have to make sure they apply, and you have to know what you need to do. And so that's kind of where we're trying to follow all that so we can help the university through general counsel. We work with general counsel a lot, understand what applies to us and what doesn't, and what we need to protect and how. So one of the things that's changed, and just in the last 10 years, maybe 15 if you really look at it with home internet use, is that your identity is now more than just your Social Security number and your name. It used to be that was when I was growing up, that was my identity. When I went to college here, that was my identity. Well, now your identity is also your email address, instant messaging. All those things represent your identity. For instance, if somebody were to get your email address and your password and then send an email to anybody threatening someone, it looks like you. You probably cannot, very unlikely that you can prove it wasn't you. And so now that's your identity. I know that my son, somebody got his instant messaging name and password, real tough password to use his school name. So so they pretended to be him, and I don't think I ever convinced that other parent that the stuff that was on the screen they captured wasn't my son. So that's the thing, is now your identity is more than just your Social Security number. It's also your email address, it's instant messaging. So there's a lot, and the slide didn't show right, but normally what I show there is that now that person's picture now becomes somebody else's picture. And now somebody else becomes you on the internet. And I don't think any of us want that to happen with some of those things they can do to you. And so we want to make sure we protect all of our identities, even the electronic versions. And so, what is the internet? The internet is called the World Wide Web. So it looks like, when you look at this, that if you see the blue one or the purple one, they're talking directly to the green one, and you think, well, they're safe. Okay? My email address just goes from A to B. I'm just going from my home to that internet site. Well, it really doesn't work that way. It really goes through all different kinds of points across the world, even, to go from point A to point B through all different kinds of services. And so when you look at that, you may think that you're safe, except that there's somebody out there sitting, and they're watching too. And so that's the person we want to be aware of. That's the person we want to protect ourselves from. And that's the person we want to deter and say, hey, leave me alone, go pick on somebody else. But they are sitting out there, and they're looking. And I always ask, how many of you here have charter at home, if you have connections at home? Or some kind of cable networking, right, in your home, or even in the dorms, for that matter. If you connect via that, it's like one big network. There are huge sections that are multiple computers together. And so I stuck some software on my machine at home because I'm on a cable network, and I could see 100 machines worth of information. So it's like a big connection point. And so you have to be careful. These people can be watching. There's ways to protect yourself. So this was a letter from the ACE. It came out in February. And what's really interesting about that is some of the things he says campus-wide. He said it needs to encompass everything. And through education institutions, these are the things you need to do. Well, what's really interesting to us, and I hope this comes forward. No, it didn't. Let me go back, because I want to make a point. We have a lot of, I have a lot of automated stuff in this that's not working very well with this, but if you look at this statement right here, I hope you can read that. But what it says is that this is not just about hardware and software. It's not just about technical. It's about organization. It's about support. It's about management. It's about communication. And that's why we're standing here today. I don't have a lot to give you technology-wise, because you wouldn't grasp it sitting in here. Most people wouldn't. What this is about is improving communication, improving awareness, and helping management to understand this is something you need to take seriously. And so that's what the big part about this is. So one of the things that we want to make sure people understand, and I used to have more of this in here, but now I want to kind of tailor it to what you need, is that we can help you. We're, like I said, we'll be 2 years old in February, my group, the Information Technology Security Group, and there are real things we can do for groups to help them. We are doing about 5 assessments on campus right now of other groups where we go into a group of 30, 40, 50 computers. We look at all of them, how they share information, what they should be protecting. We actually try to break down what your protections are, and we come back and show you how to do it better. We do those things. We can do firewalls, help you set up firewalls to protect your information. We can do lots of things for you to help you protect what you're doing. Or if it's just your PC on your desk, it's just you, and you want to be protected better, you want to be a little more secure, then we can help you with that too. And so we have a lot of things that we can do for you on campus to work with you and try to make yourself safer. So what can you do? And that's another part of this awareness session, is helping you understand these are things I can do. There's things we can do for you, but there's things you need to do. How many of you have read Physical Policy 135? That's normally what I get. Well, we have. I read it every day. It applies to all students, faculty, and staff in the whole entire university system. That's statewide. So it governs how you're supposed to do business, what you're supposed to do when you're using information resources. So 135, everybody needs to know what that says. Except for use policy, if you haven't read the 135, you probably haven't read the AUP either, right? It is the thing that expands 135 and goes into more detail as to what you're supposed to be able to do and not do information resources on campus. I'm going to talk about password and physical system hardening. We have guides on our website, and I'll show you our website at the end, in which you can go out, pull these guides down, and go through it yourself and harden your own system, protect your own system, cut down on some of the holes that might be in your system. What happens when you get a Windows machine? How many people here we use Windows? Everybody, okay? When you get a Windows machine shipped to you, it's shipped wide open. For a reason, Microsoft wants you to be able to use all those wonderful services that are tied into Windows. And so it's sitting wide open to the Internet. And so there are some things you'll never use turned on Windows that you need to turn off. And most of us don't ever know that or don't know how to do that, and that's what that guide does. It steps you through that and helps you turn some of those off. Virus protection, everybody in here has got virus protection, right? Good, excellent. The last virus worm attack helped us a lot with that. We went from about 5,000 to 15,000 machines in about 2 months because of virus problems. So, and personal firewall, if you have any kind of confidential information, student records tied in any way to identities, you ought to seriously consider putting a personal firewall on your machine, because that's just the added layer of protection to keep the hackers out, because they want that kind of information. And so that's an added layer of protection that will really help you keep them out of your system. So, Physical Policy 135. What I always like to do, if this works right, is give a quiz. Because this is the policy is about 4 pages long, but I pulled some questions out to try to help you understand what it really says. So the first question says, the use of university information technology resources is a who said, did you say privilege? I hope, let's see if this works. Yeah, it does. Okay. It is a privilege. A lot of people say it is a right, and so I'm allowed to do that. It's all mine. You know, I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do. Well, the AUP and 135 both say that it's a privilege. Employee electronic mail may be a what? Public record, right? Yes, and that kind of came out of some recent instances with our management. So, that was a question that was asked. It was a legitimate question, and the question is that email. We only store it for 2 weeks on our systems. Other people may store it longer, but it is a public record. So, minimal personal use of IT resources is or is not allowed by this policy. It is allowed. Minimal personal use is allowed. It is written down. That is allowed. So via the policy. All right. The next one talks about what governs your use. It's hard for me to say that word. Applicable university policies. Yeah, that's always a good guess. And the laws of State of Tennessee and the United States. Now, what I always like to ask is, a lot of people guess that right because it kind of fits. Well, what are those? And most people don't know. And so that's another thing we're trying to do with our education process, is help people understand what laws apply to what we do. And that was the legal landscape I showed you a minute ago. Users should maintain it up to date. What kind of protection? We talked about it. Virus. Right. Users must recognize that the use of IT resources is not completely safe. Well, that's a good word. I like that word better, but it actually is private. And another question we get a lot is, and I don't know if you can read this, but the university can or cannot protect users from the presence of material they may find offensive. Cannot, right? We cannot guarantee that, and that's there's a lot more to it than that. But that's some of the questions I ask a lot of time. People aren't real sure that it says what it says. So, give yourself a big hand if you got them all right. Password. OIT has adopted a password policy that we are required to follow. We're actually, in the next 2 or 3 months, going to go through a self-audit and find out how many people have actually done that. But we are forcing ourselves to do some things that now are inconvenient. And if you look at this, there's some things in that, and I hope everybody can read it with the red, but 8 characters long. It has to have alphanumerics in it. It's great if it has upper and lowercase letters in it. There's a lot of examples, and I'm going to show you just some of those. But when you look at this, it's suddenly now harder to do passwords. I got to change them every 6 months. You don't write them down and stick them on your monitor. You don't write them down underneath. Like a lot of times, the best place to find a password is flip the keyboard over, okay, and there's somebody's password. You want to protect that because they write them down, and you write them down, and you put them in your drawer. Okay, anybody wanted to get in your system, and you would know that's where it was. And if you had real information they needed, it wouldn't take long for them to get that. So this is some of the guidelines for passwords. I'm going to I hope to show you some examples. I don't know where that slide went. Okay, so physical security. You need to protect your physical security. Slade gave an example of a Boston College where the person went around with key logging software. Well, the reason he got in all those systems is because they did not have screensavers, or they didn't have their system locked in any way. So this person could just walk in this office, plug it in, and in less than 5 minutes be gone, and everything they typed would be sent to him. And that's part of the physical security issue. I had a stick the other day that I was carrying. It had a 40 megabyte memory stick. I don't know how many of you have seen those. In 2 minutes, I can plug that in your machine, download whatever I want, up to 40 megabytes, and be gone. And you'll never know I took it. And that's what we're talking about with physical security. If you just leave it wide open, no password, no protections whatsoever, then somebody walking around and say, well, it's not going to happen on this campus. It's happened at multiple campuses. Somebody prosecuted Boston College. It does happen. They'll have your information. Do personal banking online. Do you do anything where you use a password that's sensitive information? They'll have that. And you'll never know they took it. I know recently that Slade and I were doing a presentation over in the UC, and he was looking at my machine, and someone I had been helping somebody with the machine turn sharing on, and someone had, from Friday to Monday, pushed a key logging software to my machine, and I hadn't activated it yet. We got it turned off, and I got sharing turned off, but they were going to key log all my information. So they push it to your machine even. So physical security is very important that you protect it. I know that when you don't want to get up, walk away, and be gone 20 minutes and come back having to type a password, but that's important. It's a simple measure. It's a little bit of inconvenience, but it provides you some real security. The last one says BIOS passwords. If anybody has, any professor or anybody working here has sensitive information on your machine, student information especially, one of the things you really ought to look at is putting what's called a BIOS password, so that whenever it comes up, you have to log password through that before you ever get to the operating system. And so that's something you ought to seriously consider doing. So wireless. How many people use wireless? I do. I normally get more than that, especially out of students. With wireless, what's called access points, and that's several people access points in a building, or you can sit outside and get in what's called an access point. Well, what happens is all these people on this are sharing the same access point, so all their information is traveling through that one point. And whenever you get a person sitting there who is not necessarily a nice guy, who logs on and breaks in, well, he can see all this information from these others with what's called a sniffer. And so we can pick that essentially out of the air. And that is why with wireless, if you're doing any kind of logons, using your passwords, you ought to use what's called the VPN. You ought to encrypt it to protect it. If you're not doing that, don't understand how to do that, give us a call, contact us, we'll help you. Because you don't need to just assume because I'm a wireless, I'm like wired, and I can do whatever I want. One of the articles that I show at local schools is a reporter in California sat on the front lawn of a school that had a wireless network, said he kicked his shoes off. In 2 hours, he had hundreds of students' information, including medical records, through the wireless network. And it's that simple. All you got to do is be able to just log on. Okay. All right. There's several things. Normally, when I do this with my machine, I connect to the internet. Will this connect? It will. Okay, good. All right. I'd like to show you. Just touch it like you do. Okay. Double click. All right.
Hit it harder.
That went. All right. That's our web page. If you can see that and look at that, it has lots of information on resources. If you look at the resources part there, that's where a lot of, wow, that's cool. All right, so that's where a lot of the, like VPN software, antivirus software, security resources, also the hardening guides are there. I was talking about the hardening guides. They're all there. And so also there's policies and procedures are there. Now, how would I go back?
Just hit the bottom of the screen there.
Oh, down here?
Yeah, see where's your PowerPoint presentation? In the center of the middle. Now at the bottom.
Where it says PowerPoint slideshow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And then
Hit start again.
there you go.
Oh, that's too technical for me. Okay. All right. So that's good. That's where we were. So, but if you go back to the web page, when you get to it first, there's virus. There's several different things there that you can do, like request a scan of your system. There's other things, pages there that you can look at. CBT training. There are over 500 training courses you can take online that are free, provided for you. All you got to do is log in. And one of those is a basic security course that's really, really good. It takes about 30, 45 minutes to take. I recommend anybody that's interested in security, or if you don't understand some of the concepts, to take that. It doesn't take very long. It's free. So we actually have a Homeland Security page. I thought it was really interesting. I show people a lot. There's an identity theft page now because that is so rampant, such a problem in our society. They actually set up a web page where you can go and report your identity theft and get information. But there's also, we get a lot of our information from the CIS, Center for Internet Security, SANS, and National Security Agency. Those are three agencies where if you want that information, want to do more, want to understand more, that's where we pull a lot of our information from. So one of the things I want to go over is recently we performed an assessment of the Knoxville campus. One of the questions that we had as a group and through all of OIT is, what do people need? What are they really doing? And what do they need for the future in terms of protections and in terms of security? And so we didn't know that. we just kind of deal with whoever we deal with. We never really talked to the campus. So we took 5 individuals, and the goal was, to go out and look at this, was to go out and start with a questionnaire. We interviewed over 60 departments, face-to-face, not just let them fill out a questionnaire and us log the information. We went and talked to these people, and hopefully maybe we came to talk to somebody in nuclear engineering. We tried to hit every department on campus that had any kind of major systems. And so we wanted to know, what are you doing, and what are you trying to do, and how can we help you? And so we came up with a report out of that. And as you can tell, we started January through April. It took us a while because we wanted to give everybody a chance to voice their opinion. We don't want to do things to the network or to the systems that are going to block what you do on a regular basis and try to get an education. And so that's part of the whole connection with academia, is trying to work together. And I came up with a top 10. You can kind of read those. But what it amounts to is we need structure. Most people we interviewed said, you need structure. You need some way to report things. You need a way for people to make decisions. You need a way to protect us. Sometimes we don't know how to protect ourselves. And so those, a lot of the things that came out of this, the top 10, are from that. If you look at this, these are things that OIT has already done. I talked about the password policy and the hardening policies. But what we want to say is OIT is taking it upon ourselves to start first. We have tougher requirements for basic information systems security than anybody else on campus, anybody else at any of the universities. We have tougher password policies. We're required to use the hardening guides. We have things that we're doing because we want to show to the rest of the university, yes, this can be done. You can still do business. You can still work. You can still be efficient with all these security things in place. And so we started with ourselves. And also, the campus, we now have a HIPAA privacy officer, 135 I talked about, AEP I talked about. We have a task force in place trying to eliminate Social Security number as a principal identifier. So that hopefully that's going to happen over the next few months. They've already done it some places, but some of it's embedded in code, and so it's going to take a little longer. We also have a steering committee in which we're trying to classify information. One of the problems we have is a lot of people use the word sensitive, a lot of people use the word confidential, and there's no definition for really what that is, except legalese. And so we're trying to work and try to come up with definitions of information. Okay, what the biggest issues with this, the first thing is it's going to require change in behavior. It's a cultural change. It means, like I said a while ago, you're going to have to take one more step. You're going to have to do things just a little bit differently. You're going to have to be aware of what's going on and the things that are happening to your system. Changing processes may take 2 more steps, may mean you have to do things differently than how you do it now to protect yourself and to eliminate you from being one of those people that gets infected and now is either loses information and or affects somebody else's ability to do work. And so you don't want to be one of those people. So it may change your processes. The other thing is it's going to take some money. It's going to take a change in budget. And so how do we fund these changes? How do we help these make this happen? So one of the things that kind of interesting, we got a little guy, our little what do you call it, mascot, and his name is Sam, and it stands for Security, Academics, and Management working together. And so we want to have those 3 things working together to try to increase the level of awareness and protect the university assets, the university as a whole, better. And so these 3 things have to go together. And we're working the security side. We want academics involved in all the decisions. We want to have your input. We want to know the issues and the concerns. And we have to have management that understands that this is a real issue and a real problem. And so that's kind of what we're trying to work through. And I'm not sure how this is going to look, but normally it all disappears. But the big word there is communicate. We want to be able to talk. We want to be able to understand. We want to talk about things. We're not going to just push rules on people and stand up on the table and shout. We don't do that. We're trying to work with the university as a whole. That's what the assessment was for, is to try to get your input. If you have concerns or thoughts or ideas or issues or problems, we don't know what they are. So one of the things that has come out of this is that there's no mountain too high. I don't know if you noticed Sam, I don't know if you could see him, but he kind of climbs the mountain. Well, the point is that we want to climb that first mountain. We want to get to the point where we have a stable information systems environment, a secure environment, a protected environment. And then once we get to that point, then we can't stop. You got to keep going. And so we want to be able to keep going and keep protecting ourselves. As new systems come online and new applications are in place, we want to protect those too. So security's up to you. That's one of the points we want to drive home. I leave that as the last slide always because security is up to you. We need your help. We need you to help us. There's our web page. There's how you contact us. We want to work together. We want this to be you and us, the university community, and security and OIT working together to protect yourself. We want to provide you the tools you need. We would rather you be able to do it and understand it than us having to come do it for you all the time. And so that's what the hardening policies are for. That's what the antivirus is for. It's so that you can be proactive in protecting yourself. If you, in the last incidents, all the worms we had, if you had up-to-date antivirus, and if you had your system patched to the current level, which means that you just go to Microsoft and update your system, then there's a very high probability you would not have been attacked at all. We would have seen a very, very small problem at the university, but instead we had a huge, huge problem that we're still fighting. And so that's why we need your help. We can't go out and do this to every system. There's too many. So we need to do it for yourself. And so that's part of what we're trying to help people with and help people understand.
Okay. All right.
Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, we have time for questions and comments.
Yes.
Peter?
I'm interested in spyware. I installed a free version of Adaware, and it's amazing. After every internet session, I find between 2 and 7 files that constitute spyware. If you have too many, what happens, and what precisely are they doing? There's, for instance, one is called Gator, the other one I think is called the Tracking Company or something like that. That's at least the file name I see.
You know what?
Gator is profiling what you watch on the web and presenting you with ads to buy things based on what you see.
Right.
And visiting certain websites, if you allow them to install that, that will happen. Using the hardening guides should put some settings in your Internet Explorer.
Prevent that?
Yes.
Some of it will see people.
Or you can use a different web route. Mozilla, for example, prevents pop-ups.
Now what about Adaware? The free version I have does not have a real-time monitor, so I always have to manually scan.
Yeah, me too. I quit using it because of that. So.
Spybot, I believe, is another one that's a nice
Well,
one.
should you be doing that? What happens if you get too many of these things? I mean, I've heard of computers on campus that had hundreds of these because they never scanned. What happens?
It just sits there and runs.
It just sits there and runs. Just eats
Yeah,
cycles on
they're using your resources.
Right.
I mean,
They are. They're using the resources, then they're using you. So.
At some point, there got to be an influence. I mean, they have to have an influence on the performance of your system.
Yes, they do.
You can't have hundreds running and nothing's happening.
Right.
Well, machines are actually so powerful now that you may not notice for quite a while.
For quite a while.
Yeah, because they're really not doing that much to your system. They're just watching.
Now, you mentioned the changing legal landscape. What's incredible to me is that somebody can put spyware on my computer. That's like putting a microphone in my house. What is happening? Do you know anything?
No, well, there are some things in legislation, but whenever they do some of that to block that, a lot of times they block the good tools that we try to use. And so they're trying to compromise, find an answer that says, well, the people that need to be able to do that can still do that, but the people you don't want to have doing that, you restrict them. And that hasn't been written yet. And so I don't know when we would see something like that. So I haven't. It's talked about a lot, but I haven't seen anything that's written that actually would work. So
Larry?
Yeah. If you have a wireless access point, I have one at my house.
That's good.
Does that actually protect your computers appreciably? I mean, and the IP address is the modem, for example, and your computers don't show up directly.
Yes, it does help. It does protect, especially if you have a router built in, like mine. I have a router built into mine, and I run that, which that is much better than sitting on whatever internet connection wide open. Yes, it is. But another thing you need to check about, I thought you were going to ask, but you ought to check about wireless. For instance, Slade went to West Virginia, and he was sitting out on his relative's back porch picking up wireless networks from other people and houses next door. And so you need to make sure that when you set up your wireless network that you set restrictions, encrypt, and make sure that only you can have access, the machines you use have access to that wireless access point. Because people can pick it up. Mine goes almost to the street, but it doesn't. So, but somebody sitting in a car or sitting somewhere nearby, if you've got a really good access point set in a good spot, they could actually pick that up. And so protect yourself that way too. Almost all wireless access points that I've seen have a way to go in and restrict it so that only certain machines have access. And that's what I do with mine. So, got to do that too. Yes?
Do you have somewhere on your website that indicates where one can go, for example, to get a program that will check to make sure you don't have keystroke loggers or this other stuff that are some other things are mentioned? Are there things like that that one can just go and get?
Well, one of the things that there is not, it doesn't point to programs. You can request a scan of your system on there, and it comes directly to us, and we'll scan your system for you, and we can find, 90% of that type of stuff on your machine, and so we can report it back to you. But we don't have, there's not a place that points to you that says, yeah, go to this thing, because we can help you if you want to do that. We can talk to you offline.
Like, is there something that one can like, do you have a list of where I can go download software that I can
No,
myself?
we don't do that because it may sound kind of silly, but we don't want the people who want to use it illegally and or viciously to have access to that too. If somebody asks and they want to use it for their own private, then we'll help you with it. One of the ladies, a couple of teachers at the school that I went to asked me the same question, and I said, hey, come see me offline, I'll tell you what those are, but we don't want to help the whole university figure out how to look at other people's systems. Because once you get it on yours, you can learn how to use it on other people's. And so we kind of want to restrict some of that if we can.
Just mention another word, encryption. When I normally send email, it's not encrypted. I have to specifically do that. Right?
Yes.
What's the drawback? How long does it take? Find the drawback? Or?
Yes. Response is the only drawback.
I mean, if it's encrypted, there's no way that anybody could decrypt this in a reasonable time.
No, right. There's people that can, but it's most likely they're not going to on an email message floating across the university network.
Right.
And so encrypted.
So the drawback is time?
Yes.
So it would take me much longer to send email if I encrypted. Is that it?
Not much longer, no.
Not much.
It's just, and a lot of it's the time on the other end. Like, for instance, when I get email from people who encrypted, it comes with that signature, and I have to agree to open it. And like, for instance, on my PDA, when I sync my PDA with my computer, the ones that are encrypted don't go with it. And so I don't real sure why that is. It just doesn't work. And so that's some of the little issues why people don't use it. Most of it's because they haven't been told, and we haven't educated, and we don't have a real program ready right now that we tell everybody to use this. And so, but one of the things we're pushing in that assessment is to encrypt all services like that, encrypt email, encrypt Telnet. Don't use Telnet. Don't use some of those services.
How would that work? If I encrypt the message, how do you decipher it on the other end?
You have a private key and a public key.
Okay,
Yeah.
public.
And someone else will have access to your public key.
Okay.
Right. Essentially, when I say view this, it eliminates the key. I don't have to have the key anymore because I don't have encryption on mine, and so that goes away.
Robbie, you had a question?
Is there a general policy or a shift to move from Windows to Linux-based systems on campus slowly?
No, there's no push policy.
That would save a lot of people.
Well, what would save a lot of trouble if we could get to the latest version of Windows. If we could get there, we'd be happy. There's a lot of 95, 98 stuff on campus. And those things you can walk right up and get right into one of those machines. And so, if we could just get everybody running XP, that'd be we're never going to get everybody to run Linux or Unix because very few people are comfortable with that. And we're not going to force that. But we'd like to strongly encourage that you use XP. So I hope that answers that. I understand where you're coming from, but it's really tough. I don't know that you can make me use Linux or Unix. I like Windows for what I do. Because that's what I do. I do basic management type stuff. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. I do see a few new people in the audience. We usually have new people, and the new people may not know that we do have refreshments downstairs. Everyone is invited. But before we adjourn, let's express our appreciation to Robert and Slade for their presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I'd like to, are we offline? Are we offline?
Mic's on.
Oh, okay. I'd like to go back and figure out, some of the slides didn't work.
He has
Get the different version.
PowerPoint, that's what it has to be. Which version?
I run 2002.
I have
What do we have, Gary?
screensaver.
What version?